Weathering. Earlier we have learned about the earth movement, especially endogenic movement we have learned. Today we are going to learn exogenic movement. In that, preferably we are going to start with weathering. Weathering is the external forces that sculpture the surface of the earth. In the endogenic forces, the landforms were formed, whereas in exogenic forces, these landforms are getting sculptured and weathering is taking place. That is the breaking and decomposition of the rocks, and the same thing after weathering, the same rock materials when it goes down and gets settled in the lower ground, it uplifts the aggregate the lower ground and degrade the upper ground, and we say that it is sculpturing the earth's surface. The relief of any land is not permanent on the earth's surface. Every block of rock is subjected to aerial actions and modifications. Over a period of geological time, these surface rocks break down into smaller and finer pieces and move away from their sources. Since rocks present in the uppermost layers of the Earth's crust are in close interaction with the process of atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, they are dynamic features. It is not constant. The sun's radiant energy, the hydrological cycle, oxygen and carbon dioxide of the atmosphere, and the action of organic acids over the rocks are the main factors of weathering: mass wasting, erosion, transportation, and deposition. Sun's radiant energy we are talking about, that is the insolation of sun's energy, which is falling on the surface of the earth, and the layer of the rock which is exposed to the sun's energy, or the hydrological cycle which is expe- experienced on the surface of the earth, especially the outer layer of the rocks, or the outer layer of the rocks which is exposed to the air's oxygen or carbon dioxide. They are subjected to weathering. What is weathering? It is a physical disintegration and chemical decomposition of rock, that is breakdown of rocks into minor fragments, soils, sediments. Chief characteristics of weathering are disintegration of rocks, chemical change in the rocks, that is the decomposition, and change in the surface of land, formation of soil. The factors influencing weathering are topography, in which area, which kind of topography, highland or lowland area, depending on that. Climatic conditions, especially temperature and humidity, is the main factor. Physical characteristics of rocks, uh, how the rock is exposed to the exogenic forces. Then chemical and structural characteristics of rocks, that is especially the minerals in the rocks and their structural features. Then vegetation cover, like, and micro and macro vegetations. Weathering involves no moving agent of transport. Wherever the weathering is taking place, the rock is getting broken down or decomposed, but it does not move away from that place. Moving away will be erosion. What are the chief characteristics of weathering? Weathering involves disintegration, decay. Two things: disintegration, physically; decay in chemical words. Chemically, it will get decayed or decomposed of solid rocks. It depends on climatic elements especially temperature and rainfall or precipitation or humidity. On the characteristics of rocks like chemical composition of the rocks, hardness of the rocks, texture of the rocks, and permeability of rocks determine the weathering pattern. Soft rocks get weathered soon, whereas hard rock takes more time. Weathering affects the surface of the earth. Different landforms are sculptured. Then weathering causes formation of soil, which helps in agriculture. Weathering involves not one but several processes to cause disintegration of rocks. All the processes are interconnected. Weathering changes hard massive rocks into finer materials. It prepares rock materials for transportation by agents of gradation, that is, ice, river, water, rainwater, then wind, tides, etc. Until unless weathering is not taking place, erosion will not happen. Types of weathering. Three types mainly, that is physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. Physical weathering. It is also known as mechanical weathering. It is the disintegration by mechanical process. And causes of physical weathering are by insolation, by frost action, where on the rocks of different mineral composition. Depending on mineral composition, rocks will get disintegrated. Particle size also depending on that. Then depth of the layer of the rock. The more the depth of hard rock, the disintegration will take more time. In physical weathering, there is no change in the chemical composition of the rocks. Now, by insulation of physical weathering, that is also known as thermal weathering also. First, number one is block disintegration. Here we can see block disintegration. It is generally homogeneous rocks, mainly in dry desert areas, hot at daytime and cold at night time. So extreme temperature, extreme range of temperature during the day, it is very high. During the night, it is very cold. So extreme range of temperature contracts and contracts together at night and diverge during the daytime, and continuous process it is, and that's why the stresses are formed in the rocks and finally leading to its disintegration. Granular disintegration. Granules, different minerals. Here you have to remember, here block is disintegration, same type of minerals, whereas in granular, different minerals, and different minerals expands at different rate, and hence different rate of expansion and contraction is taking place, which is leading to fragmentation of rocks like granite. Now it is more intense in regions of sharp temperature fluctuation, that is the temperature range, dry air, absence of poorly developed vegetation. All this we get in the tropical deserts. Rocks composed of different colored minerals also undergo different expansion. This is due to the fact that the dark minerals strongly heated than the lighter ones. So differential heating, differential expansion, and differential cooling, and that's why the stress is formed and rock is getting disintegrated. By insulation, another point is exfoliation. Exfoliation is the peeling off the exposed layer of rock as they expand and crack. It also takes place by repeated wetting and drying of rock surface, as during wetting, that is the monsoon time or rainy season, its outer layer absorbs moisture and expand. When they dry, this moisture evaporates and the outer layer of the rock quickly shrinks, finally leading to peeling of the outer layer of the rock. Otherwise, if it is because of the insulation, then also the outer layer of the rocks, it is the rock surface heats up and expands, whereas inner layer remains as it is cooled because it is not getting any exposure to the insulation. At night, the same outer layer is getting cooled and it gets contract, whereas during the day it is getting expanded. So continuous expansion and contraction. What is happening? Joint is forming in the rock. That is the outer layer of the rock. And that particular jointed layers, that is the outer layer of the rock getting peeled off like a onion skin. Here we can see how much is peeled off. And again this layer which is exposed, that also will get peeled off bit by bit. And the surface of the rock over here will become small to smaller, and at the end it will form into soil. Bifrost action, mainly at high altitudes, even high latitudes also, and cold climates, where during the day cracks and joints inside rock fill with water and during night they get frozen. When the ice melts, the water seeps deeper inside because while it is freezing, that time it is putting pressure on the rock surface, both the sides, and the crack is becoming deep to deeper. So when the ice thaws or melts, that time through that deeper part, the water enters into the cracks, and then again it keeps on putting pressure on the rock surface in the inner layer of the rock surface, and after that ultimately the cracks leads to the disintegration of the rock surface and even the whole rock also. Here we can see it's called frost wedging or frost action. Chemical weathering. Chemical weathering changes the composition of rocks, often decomposition of rocks when water interacts with their minerals. The process of chemical weathering, the major processes involved in chemical weathering are oxidation, carbonation, hydration, solution. Oxidation. In this process, the atmospheric oxygen combines with the metal iron. Iron in the, that is a mineral which is present in the rock, and it forms into oxides, iron oxides, hydroxides. For example, most rocks contain a certain amount of iron, which when comes in contact with air is changed into iron oxide and finally into rust, which crumbles easily, loosening the overall structure of the rock. Here you can see these rainbow mountains in Vinicunza or Vinicanca in Peru. And here lots of iron oxide is formed on the rock surface, which is the cause of oxidation, that is the chemical weathering. Carbonation. Carbonation is the reaction of carbonate or carbonate ions with minerals present in the rock. The atmospheric carbon dioxide, when dissolved in rainwater, forms carbonic acid. This carbonic acid converts calcium carbonates into calcium bicarbonate. For example, this limestone region, we can see the water seeps into the ground and then it acts, the carbonic acid acts with on the limestone region and it dissolves more of the limestone and changes the limestone structure, that is carbonic acid and calcium bicarbonate is forming calcium ions and bicarbonate ions. Hydration. Hydration involves absorption of water. Chemical composition of water molecules with a particular substance or mineral leading to a change in rock structure. Rains, streams, and seawater dissolve minerals in rocks, causing the rock to crumble. Now, water dissolves in mineral like feldspar. Upon hydration, there is swelling in the rock structure and increase in volume of minerals. The minerals lose their luster and become soft and disintegrate. Solution. In this process, minerals in rocks dissolve in water or acid. That is water, it is getting dissolved and forming into acid. Some substances present in the rock are directly soluble in water, especially if the rock is having lots of mineral salt. The soluble substances are removed by the continuous action of water and the rock no longer remains solid or forms holes. Here you can see those holes in the rocks or reels or rough surface and ultimately fall into pieces and decomposes. Biological weathering. Biological weathering is responsible for both decomposition and disintegration of rocks and minerals. It is caused by vegetation and animals. Living organisms may contribute to mechanical weathering as well as chemical weathering. Lichens, mosses, and ferns, etc. that are growing on bare rock surface may create a more humid chemical micro environment. The attachment of these organisms with the rock surface enhances physical weathering as well as chemical breakdown on the surface layer of the rocks, because when they secrete acids to the roots, they decomposes the rock, that is chemical weathering, and when they penetrates through that time, it is physical weathering. Plants. Plant roots can penetrate through cracks or crevices in rocks to deeper part of the rocks. As the root grows, they exert tremendous pressure on the rocks and causes physical weathering. The cracks is formed and breaks into pieces. The roots running in crevices in limestone and marble region produces acid. This acid is solvent action on carbonates. The dead roots of plants and dead animals residues decompose and produce carbon dioxide, which is of great importance for weathering because chemical weathering also takes place. Man and animal. Rabbits, burrowing animals, rabbits or ant or other burrowing animals, they disintegrate the soft rocks. And bodies of dead animals provide substance which react with minerals and aid in decaying process. Human beings. Humans are effective breakers of rocks. Lots of human activities are responsible for it, like quarrying, that is open mining, mining inside the earth surface, Then constructive work, deforestation, even plowing the field for agriculture, that also comes for weathering, causes of weathering. Weathering in different region. Warm, wet climate promotes rapid chemical weathering. Dry climate provide good condition for physical weathering. So dry climate, if it is there, then it is a desert climate generally, whereas tropical climate will, the weather will be seasonally wet. So in that case, chemical weathering as well as physical weathering also will take place. High temperature, high amount of water also controls vegetation. Wherever hot and humid climate there, natural vegetation will be more biodiversity will be there, and more penetration of roots into the rocks, and hence biological weathering also will take place. In even the forested region, biological weathering will be more. The rates of weathering are generally fastest in humid tropical region as there is sufficient moisture, warmth to encourage chemical decomposition. Physical weathering is more effective in areas which have little vegetation, large diurnal range of temperature like desert, hot desert, or temperature fluctuating around 0 degrees Celsius. Then seasonality of precipitation affects the rate of weathering. Rapid weathering occurs in hot and wet climates, especially chemical weathering, that is. Cold, moderate, dry climates experience intense mechanical weathering because it is dry but cold. But as it is cold, whatever water or moisture in the air, that will get frosted within the crevices and form frost wedging. Cold dry climates are very slow rates of weathering. Now let us learn about the regions. In equatorial climates, humidity and temperature are constantly high. Weathering, especially chemical weathering, is more active in these regions. In tropical climates, there is marked the dry season and wet season, that is monsoon, especially monsoon climate. And that's why differences in heating leads to constantly high rate of evaporation. Wet season precipitation of oxides of iron and aluminium takes place from rocks. This promotes formation of laterite soil. Leaching of water through the laterite rocks will form laterite soil. In dry climate or desert areas, especially tropical desert, mechanical weathering like block disintegration, granular disintegration, exfoliation will be dominant. In mid-latitude or temperate climates, main is frost actions as it is told at high altitude and high latitude. Limestone areas, solution will be the main cause of weathering. Polar climate, physical weathering due to frost action we know already, but now recent studies shows that melting water of polar region contains more carbonic acid, and if there is more carbonic acid, then chemical weathering will be more active in polar region.